Hey there, Apano here, and in this video I'll go over how to design and implement a functional character select screen into your platform fighting game. In this video, this includes the character buttons, character previews, stock and time options, and the player hands and tokens to select their character. If this series has been helpful to you, give this video a like and subscribe, and if you like access to the source code or help with coding aspects of your platform fighting game, contact me through the Patreon in the description. And so with that being said, let's hop into this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is start with a new scene. Under this new scene, we're going to have the root node be a user interface, and we're going to call this character select screen. And so this is going to be the base of our character select screen. The next stage in making this character select screen is going to be adding a background, but before I do that, we're going to save the scene. So we're going to do Control S. And what I'm going to do is go to UI and make a new folder called CSS or character select screen. It's up to you. For me, I'm just going to call it CSS and have this scene be called character underscore select underscore screen and save. The next thing I'm going to do is now add in a background, and it should look something like this. It's going to be a color rect, and I've simply just made it a full rect by pressing on this up here. And I've just selected a random color. In my case, I've made it some sort of orangey color, but you can choose to make it green or purple, whatever you want it to be. Alright, so from here, this is when we're going to start adding our three sections of the character select screen, which is going to be the settings at the top. Then in the center is going to have the buttons for the characters, and then at the bottom is going to have the preview and display of the characters. So what we're going to now add is a vertical box container, so V box container, and we're going to rename it to this CSS sections, since this is going to have three sections that I've just mentioned. We then want to click up here, go to the anchor preset, and have this be a full rect. So now underneath this, what we're going to do is add in our three sections. So now what we're going to do is add in our three sections of our character select screen, and it should look like this. Each of these are margin containers, and we're going to name them settings for the settings that we're going to have at the top, character select for the selection of the characters, and then character preview for the name of the character and the image. So in terms of the settings, what we're going to do is click on this margin container and give it a minimum custom size on the y-axis of 145. This is in relation to our project being the size of 1920 by 1080, and so if you have a larger size, you might have to increase this pixel count or pixel size. The next thing we're going to do is click on the settings, and then we're going to add a hbox container. What we're then going to do is change this hbox container name to hbox settings. So we're going to do the same thing, but for the hbox settings button, we're going to change its layout to 145 on the y-axis, but also we're going to go to the alignment and change it to center. Alright, so one of the first things we're going to add is a button, a back button that allows us to switch from this scene back to the title screen scene. So firstly, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a texture rect button or a texture button. From here, we're going to name it back button. Then we're going to enable a few settings on the button. The settings that we're going to enable are going to be ignore texture size, stretch mode from keep to keep centered. We're going to apply these normal and pressed textures, which is going to be available from the Patreon. And last but not least, I enabled a custom minimum size of 251 by 145 so that this does not become smaller than it already is. Now that we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is add the area for this button. So what we're going to do is add a new child node, and then we're going to change its name from area 2D to button area 2D, like so. Now, in terms of the properties that we're going to change, all we're going to do is enable layer 17 for our collision layers, and then for our mask, enable layer 20. Layer 17 corresponds to UI collisions or UI collisions, and mask 20 corresponds to the hand that's going to interact with these buttons. Next, what we're going to do is center the button area 2D with the position of 125 by 72. Now the last thing that we've got to do is add in a collision shape 2D. And all we're going to simply need to do is change its shape to a new rectangle shape and give it a size of 234 by 118. It should look like this by the end. Now, having done that, the next thing we're going to add is the stocks. So all we're going to do is go to our HBox setting, add a new node, and it's going to be a HBox container. We're going to then rename it to stocks. And in terms of its properties, all we're going to do is change its alignment to center and its custom minimum size to 506 in the x-axis. So within this stocks, what we're going to do is add in a button. We're going to have it be a texture button. And what we're going to do within this texture button is apply it with a few properties. So in terms of its property, what we're going to do is click on ignore texture size, make the stretch mode scale, give it a texture for the normal button. This is going to be available on the Patreon. And lastly but not least, give a minimum size of 122 in the x-axis. Before moving on, we also have to name this button, so we're going to call it button left, like so. So we're going to do what we also did for the back button, where we added an area 2D and a collision shape. So click on your button, go on add child node, and we're going to add in an area 2D. So in terms of the property, what we're going to do is go to our layer and change it to 17, go to our mask and change it to 20 as we did before, and for its position, we're going to have it be 60 by 72 to center it in the center of this button. Don't forget to rename the area to button area 2D as we did before. And then lastly, we can add a collision shape 2D. So in terms of its properties, we're going to have it be a rectangle shape 2D again, but have its size be 124 by 144 to make it fit the size of this button. So the next thing we're going to add is a little decoration. We're going to add a texture rect. And in terms of its properties, this is what we're going to have. I have a texture that is going to be used to symbolize that this is controlling the stocks. We're then going to have the expand mode be on fit width, stretch mode be on keep aspect centered, and lastly the custom minimum size of 128 by 128, which is the size of this little icon that we have over here. In terms of its texture, I just want to add, I made it linear, as if I were to zoom in and make this on nearest, it would look more pixelated, so I decided to have it be on nearest or linear. So the next thing we're going to add is a label. I'm going to call it stocks, and in terms of its properties, it's up to you how you want its font and colors to look like, but make sure it's called stocks with a capital S. And last of all, what we're going to do for the stocks is we're going to go to button left, copy it, go back to stocks and paste it, and instead of its name being button left, we're going to change it to button right, and then we're going to replace its image that was pointing to the left to now point to the right. So from here we can now focus on working on the script to increase and decrease our stock count. Now the last thing we're going to do before we start adding our scripts is go to our stocks HBox container, copy it, click on HBox settings and paste it. Then we're going to change its name from stocks 2 to time. Go to our label node, change it from stocks to time. Click on the texture rect that we added to indicate the stocks, delete it, and change the label node to something like 1 minute. Like so. This is what we're going to be using to control the time of our round. And if you like, you can also add a label node called versus mode, which will just indicate to the players when they're playing the game that this is versus mode. This may be something that I can program or change the code so that if we have a team battle mode, we can change the text to say teams mode or battle mode. And so now that we've done all of this, the next thing we're going to do is start adding our scripts. So the first script that we're going to add is for our stocks counter. So what you want to do is click on stocks, click on the add script button, and we're going to call it stocks.gd. And in terms of the script that we're going to add, it's going to look like this. So here's the script that you're going to want to type. Access to this should be available in the Patreon. The next thing we're going to do to actually get our scripts to work is we're going to click on our button, go to node, and where it says press, we're going to double click on it, and we're going to attach this signal to our stocks script, and we're going to title it increase. Connect. And so when you press on this right button over here, it should activate this increase function of our script. We're now going to do the same thing, but for the other button, which would be the left button. So button left, go to pressed, go to stocks, and we're going to have this be decrease. So now we're going to do the same thing, but with the time section. So what we're going to do is open this up, go to the time label, and add a script. I'm going to call it time.gd. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have the script look like this. So this is the totality of the script. And now we're going to connect the signals as we did before. Don't forget to save. So we're going to go back to 2D. We're going to click on button right. And button right is going to increase the time. So we're going to go to pressed. Scroll down to the time script here, or time node. I'm going to type increase. And connect it. And so now you shall see that the right button is going to be connected to the increase function. And so we're going to do the same thing, but with the button left. Go to pressed, go to time, and we're going to do decrease. And so now you're going to see the button left has attached itself to the decrease function. Now, in terms of what these scripts do, they're very simple and self-explanatory. For the stocks script, we simply just have a stocks variable, which is going to be equal to 4 by default. And what we're going to do is we're going to have it so that if the decrease or increase function is pressed, the stocks label is going to increase by 1. And so when the stocks are equal to 1 and you decrease, it's going to go back to 99. And if the stocks is equal to 99, but then you press increase, it's going to go down to 1. Now, in terms of the value that we're actually changing, we are changing in the global CSS dictionary. So we created this dictionary a few episodes back, which is going to contain vital information for the game. So we're going to have our character 1, character 2, stocks, time. We are currently changing our stocks and our time in the character select screen. And so when we change or increase the stocks to, let's say 5, it's going to increase here. And so then when we start our game, it's going to go back to this global script and it's going to say, okay, the stocks currently right now are 5. And so we're going to give each player 5 stocks to play with. It's the same thing with time. If our time is at 1, or it's at 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, when the game starts, it's going to say, oh look, the time is 10. And so now we're going to have the round last for 10 minutes. And so that when it reaches 0, the game is going to be over. Alright, so last but not least, the last script we're going to add is to the back button over here. So what we're going to do is click on our back button over here, add a script. And the script is going to be called backbutton.gd, and then create. And the script is going to look like this. The script is very simple. Simply, we're going to have a path. Once this function is triggered, if the path is not empty, we're going to change the scene to this path. And so the path that we want to direct it to is to our title screen. So here is our title screen. What we're going to do is right click on it over here, go to show in file system. I'm going to right click down here and we're going to do copy path. So we can go back to our character select screen, go to the back button over here, and up here on the top right, we're going to see path. And what we're going to do is paste the path in here. And so now when we click on this button, it's going to take us back to the title screen. But like we did before, we also need to connect our signals. So what we're going to do is go to our back button, go to node, and on pressed, we're going to go to the back button script. You can keep it as on pressed, and then we're going to connect it. And it should connect to this function over here, as you can see. So to demonstrate what we should have so far, what I'm going to do is play this scene. Oh, I see. This is not simply just a button, this is a texture button. So make sure this is texture button for the script. And I can rerun this. Alright, so this is what we should have so far. Our buttons over here for us to increase and decrease. Same with the stocks, it should go back to 99. And then once I click on this button over here, we're going to go back to the title screen. There we go. So now we've added in our settings. The next thing we're going to work on is our character select. So we can minimize the settings over here, go to our character select over here. And what we're going to do is change the layout and give it a minimum custom size in the y-axis of 459. Then from here, what we're going to do is add in a color rect. So it should look something like this. So this is the color rect I've added. It's simply just a black color rect with its opacity down to 1/2. And this is where our character buttons are going to be for us to select our character. So to contain the buttons of our characters, what we're going to use is a grid container. So we're going to go to our character select, and then what we're going to do is add a new node, and we're going to look for a grid container, like so. And then we're going to customize it like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a new scene, and we're going to have it be a user interface node. What we're going to then do is change this into a texture button. So change type, and we're going to type in texture button. What we're then going to do is save the scene. So we're going to do Control S, go to UI, character select screen. This all depends on what you want to do, but for this project we're going to do UI, character select screen. Then we're going to do character buttons. Press OK. And the format we're going to save this in is going to be CSS underscore button underscore the name of your character. So CSS underscore button underscore the name of your character. In this case it will be Fox. There we go. So now we can start working on this control button node. So in terms of the settings for this texture button, what we're going to do is change its name to character. We're then going to enable ignore texture size. The stretch mode, make sure it's keep aspect centered. Then we're going to have the texture, and the texture is just going to be whatever texture you want it to be. So if you have the same file system that I have from the Patreon, it will be under characters, and in this case it will be Fox, and then if you scroll down you'll see HUD. So that's the image I'm using. Scroll further down, we want the minimum size to be 224 by 128, and the actual size to be 224 by 128, and then lastly we want the texture to be nearest, because by default it is on inherit and you can see it's blurry, so change it to nearest and it should be more clear. One more thing to add is that the character, if you go to the character, you go to signals and then you go to group here, should be in a group called char underscore select, and then we're going to press add. The next important thing to add is either a texture rect or a color rect. So in this case I'm going to go for a color rect for demonstration purposes, but what you're going to want to do is go to a color rect or texture rect, have it be the full canvas size, go over to visibility and click on show behind parent. And so from here the idea is that you're able to select whatever color you want the background of the button to be. So in this example I can choose it to be some sort of red color, like so. If you want to decorate this to your own liking, you can have this be a texture rect with its own image. Alright, so now what we're going to do is add the name of our character. So what we're going to do is click on our texture button, right click, add child node, type in label, click on label, then enter the name of your character. So in this case it will be Fox. Fox, there we go. Then we're going to change the alignment of the horizontal and vertical to center. And then what we're going to do is go to theme overrides, and here you want to customize the font text. Then what we're going to do is go to layout, go to layout mode, go to anchors, and go to anchors preset and change it to center bottom. And so now you have the label at the center bottom of the character button. And then last but not least, we're then going to add the area interaction. So go to our texture button, add a node, and we're going to add an area 2D. We're going to name our area 2D character area, like so. And in terms of its properties, what we're going to do is change its collision on the layer to 18, and on the mask make it 19. In Smash Bros you have a hand that selects a token, and then once the token is on top of a character button like this and you let go, the token is going to rest on the button. And so this button is going to interact with that token. But the layer itself is called a C portrait or a character portrait or character button, however you'd want it to be. In case you missed what the collision system is for this project, here it is. So on layers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, you have player, walls, blast zones, platforms, ledge, blast zones. So this is for the gameplay. And in terms of the UI, we have layers 17, 18, 19 and 20 for UI collisions that are general, the character portrait or character buttons, the token which we're going to create, and the hand that's going to pick up the token. We also want to change the position of this area 2D to be in the middle of this character button. So we're going to go to transform and change the position to 112 to 64. In this case, this is the exact center of this button, but if your button varies in size, you're going to have to change the position. So the next thing to add is a collision shape 2D for this area 2D. So type in collision and you'll get collision shape 2D. And in terms of the shape, we're going to select rectangle shape 2D, and we want this to fit the entire size of this button. So it'd be 224 by 128. And then last but not least, we're going to add a position 2D or marker 2D, depending on which version of Godot you're using. And we're going to simply have this be in the center of our character button. So go to transform and make the position 112 by 64. If you are going to have your button be the exact same size as mine. This marker 2D is going to be where our token is going to rest at once the hand has let go of it. Lastly, we're also going to rename this marker 2D to point, like so. Then last but not least, for this section, we're going to add the script for our character button. So click on the character, click on add script, and CSS underscore BTN underscore Fox should be good. And the code you're going to want to type in should look like this. So here's the final version of the code. If you don't want to type it out, you can access it from the Patreon, or the code is going to be available there. And so then what we're going to do is attach these two functions, as these two are signals. So these two group of functions over here and over here, because these are functions. We're going to click on character, go to node, and on button down, we're going to go to this script, and the method is going to be on character button down and connect it. Then what we're going to do is copy this text, click on the same button, go to button up, and then do on character button up, and then click connect. Then what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this, copy it, click on character area 2D, go to area entered on the same script and type in on area 2D area entered, and then lastly do the same thing for exited. So on the same area 2D, go to area exited, double click on it, and change the receiver method to on area 2D area exited. You can change the name of these functions, it doesn't have to be this, but for the sake of the code that I have, this is what we're going to need to do. So now if you look in the top right, you're going to see there's now two more variables that allow us to add textures. What we're going to do is add a regular texture, so HUD from before, and then a texture for when the button is pressed down by a token. So in this case I have one called hurt. That's just going to change from when the character is not selected to when the character is selected as a little animation. So the function of this code is quite simple. I have 4 variables. The first one is going to be the name of the character. So in this case, the name of our character is Fox. If the name of your character is not Fox, you might want to change that. Then I have these two texture variables, as I showed you. We also have the ID of this button. You have the detector, which is going to be used later on by the hand and the token. And then we have these signals which are going to connect to the hands and the token when we connect our character button to the main character select screen. The rest of these functions should be self-explanatory. It's simply just going to change the texture of the button once it's pressed down or if it's released up. And in terms of this is going to make sense when we introduce the token, which is going to be placed on top of the character button. And so the final version of this character button should look like this. And so to actually finish this whole section of this part of the project, what we're going to need to do is go back to our original character select screen, go back to this grid container that we created, and instantiate a child scene. So here you're going to want to type CSS underscore BTN underscore and then the name of your character, which in this case is Fox. Press open and he should be present here. And so the idea here is that you can have multiple characters. So in this case, if I was to duplicate Fox, I could let's say do Control D, do Control D, do Control D, and it will populate and then it will populate this character select screen automatically without you having to choose where the character button is going to be located. If you do want to do that, you can, but this is an easier way to get that done. Alright, so now the next thing that we're going to work on is our character previews. Our character previews is what's going to show up at the bottom of our screen when you're selecting your character, as you can see with Fox and Wolf. We're going to also be able to customize the color of the character previews squares. Okay, so the first things we're going to do is go to our character previews, add a new node, and it's going to be a horizontal box container. We're going to then change this to character previews or chart previews and have the alignment be in the center. We're now going to create a new scene. So what we're going to do is click up here, have it be a user interface, and then we're going to save. Then we're going to go to UI, character select screen, and then we're going to make a new folder and call it character previews. We're then going to title the scene as CSS character previews and then save it. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our control node and change it to character preview. We're then going to go to layout, and where the anchor is present, we're going to have it be in the top left. Then on container sizing, we're going to then go to horizontal and then press expand. Then we're going to add 3 nodes. We're going to add a color rect and 2 texture rects, like this. So you should have a color rect and 2 texture rects. So for the color rect, we're going to rename it to background color. And for the texture rects, for the first one, we're going to have it be called full texture. And then the other one, we're going to have it be called hover texture. So the hover texture is going to be the half opacity version of the texture that's going to be displayed when the token is hovering over the character button. Whereas the full texture is going to be the full opacity version of that. The background color is what's going to be displayed in the background of when the character's texture is displayed. So in terms of the properties for the color rect, what we're going to do is we're going to have the anchor be set on full rect. Make sure the self modulation is on half opacity, so that would be 127. And in terms of its color, you can have it be whatever you really want it to be. In this case, I've decided to go for an orangey red color. Now for the full texture, what you're going to want to do is enable ignore size for the expand mode. For the stretch mode, you want to enable keep aspect centered. For the anchor preset, make sure it's on full rect. And for the filter, make sure it's on nearest, so that the image you apply does not look blurry. For the hover texture, you want to do the same things, except for the self modulate, you want to have the opacity be half as well, which is 127. Now the next 3 nodes that we're going to add is going to be a regular control node. Then from the control node, we're going to add a color rect, and then we're also going to add a label. Make sure the color rect and the label are children of the control node. And then we're going to rename the control node to bottom text and the label to character name. Right click on character name and make sure you enable access as unique name. So in terms of the values, what you want to do is go to bottom text and have the exact same values that we have over here. So you want to go to anchors, custom, and set the anchor points to be the same. Then you also want to set the anchor offsets to be the same and the grow direction, and don't forget to change the position as well. Then for the color rect, what we're going to do is set a minimum custom size of 300 by 20. Make sure it's a full rect and have the same size and position. Lastly, for the character name, what we're going to need to do is make sure that the custom minimum size is 200 by 10 and make sure the anchors are in the center. In terms of its position, make sure its position is -100 by -50 and the size is 200 by 100, which is the minimum size. This is just to center the text inside of this area, and you're going to see what's going to happen once we add it to our character select screen down here. Now the last step for this section would be to add a script. So we're going to go over here and you can have the script be called CSS_character_previews and click on create. And then we're going to replace all of this code, and the code you're going to want to replace it with is going to look like this. So here's what the code is going to look like, and here's the second part of the code. And for all of you who don't want to write down all of this code, you don't have to worry. The code is going to be available in the Patreon. So in the Patreon, you have access to all of the source code, including the other scripts, not just this one, so don't worry. Before I continue, I want to address a small typing error that I made on my part. So over here, instead of it being car name, it's meant to be character name, so that this can match up with this. And in terms of full texture, over here I've misspelled it as texture. So these are just small things that you want to make sure you guys aren't making errors on. For the rest of the video, it might say car texture, but this is a post editing thing, so don't worry if it says car name near the end of the video. Now, one thing I do want to point out to you is the optional parts of the code, or the parts of the code that's going to change. The part of the code that's going to change is going to be this section over here, lines 12 to 14. This section over here, line 31 to 51. This section over here, 53 to 70. And 73 to 90. Now, the thing that's going to change in these lines of code is the characters. So if you have Gigas, let's say SpongeBob, or you have Minecraft Steve as your characters, obviously having these variables such as Wolf or Fox or Mario is not going to work for your project. So I'm going to briefly explain to you what these variables do, and then you'll be able to change these variables to match your own project. So with these variables added, which are going to be textures, when you click on your node, you're going to see that you have some textures over here. And the way you're going to want to populate them is going to look like this. So here's how you're going to want to populate them. You're going to want to populate them with an image of your character that's going to display in the preview when the character button is hovered or selected. And so, of course, if you have Fox as a character, you're going to want to replace every time you see the instance of Fox over here, here, or here with your own character. Apart from that, what these two variables do, these exported variables, is they are going to display the color of the character preview box depending on the player. So if you're player 1, you might want to have red, player 2 might want to have blue. And so I could change this to a color of, let's say, blue and a form of transparent blue. And so once I've closed this scene and opened it up again, so as you can see, once I reloaded the scene, the colors now change. So I can now change this to a color of, let's say, a purple with a purple transparent color. And so you can set it to whatever you would like it to be. And so now, to show that all of this works, what we're going to do is go to our character select screen, go to Charcter, but before we do that, make sure you go to character previews over here and just check to make sure that the custom minimum size in the y-axis is 476. I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but anyways, go to Charcter, instantiate child scene, and we're going to have it be this CSS character previews. So here you go, I have the CSS character previews here, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I have player 1 and player 2. For player 1, what I'm going to do is click on character preview for character 1, go to ID and set it to 1 for player 1. Then I'm going to go to character preview 2, go to ID and set it to 2 for player 2. And for the user, when they're playing the game, to differentiate between player 1 and player 2, what you can do is maybe for player 1 you want to have a red color, but for player 2 you might want to have a bluish type of color. So you might want to go to banner color and have it be changed to blue, like so. One more thing we're going to do before we move on to the next section is actually connecting the signals. So over here we have the Fox character button, right? So we have 3 different functions over here. So what we're going to do is click on this character button over here, go to node, go to the script over here, and let's highlight the first one. The first one is on character hovered. And so when this character button is being hovered by the token, we're going to have it display the character's image over here. So we're going to click on the character, go to character underscore hovered, change the receiver method to underscore on underscore character underscore hovered, go to the first character preview node, change the method, and then connect it. Then we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do character hovered, then scroll all the way down to the bottom character preview, the next one, change the receiver method, and then connect. And so what we're then going to do is move on to the next function, on character selected, go to character underscore selected, double click on that, go to the character preview and change the receiver method. And then you repeat the same thing but for the other one. So character preview 2, change the receiver method, on character selected, and then lastly you do the same thing for on character deselected. So copy this, make sure you're on the character button for Fox, go to character deselected, double click on it, scroll all the way down, go to character preview, change receiver method, connect, and then you do the same thing but for the other one. Like so. And so when this is either selected, hovered, or deselected, it will display over here depending on the player that does it. So if it's player 1, it will show up for player 1. If it's player 2, it will show up for player 2. And the way it works is by, if you look in the top right over here, you have the name of the character button. So in this case it's Fox. And so when you go to the character preview script, it's going to check for what the name of the character button is. So if it is Fox, it's going to display the Fox texture. So if, let's say you have SpongeBob as an example, for your character you would want to have SpongeBob over here. You want to have SpongeBob icons, right? Images over here. Then for the character preview in the script, you would want to have one of your character variables here be SpongeBob with a particular texture, right? So instead of Fox, you might want to have SpongeBob. And every time you see Fox here, you'd want to change it to SpongeBob. And so now we can actually move on to the next section, which should be the handle the tokens. So now we're going to move over to making the tokens that select the characters. What we're going to do is make a new scene, select 2D scene, and for now we're just going to save it. So we're going to do Ctrl S, and we're going to go to UI, character select screen, and then we're going to call it token, and then save it. We're going to right click over here, change type, make sure it's a rigid body 2D, and then we're going to name it token. And then these are all the settings we're going to have for it. Alright, so these are the settings you're going to want to have for the rigid body 2D. We're going to have the mass be 1000 kg. We're going to enable a physics material override, or not change any of its values. We're going to have the gravity scale be 0.1, and can sleep will be off. And in terms of its collisions, the collision layer is going to be 19, and the collision mask is also going to be 19. We're then also going to add a sprite 2D. So this is going to be the image you want for the token. So in my own case, I'm going to have it be Fox's shine. So as you can see, I've chosen to add Fox's shine. If you want it to look more sharp, you can go to visibility and you can change, or actually you go to texture and you can change the filter to nearest. There we go. I also decided to change the scale to make it bigger. Then you want to change its name to icon or image. It's up to you. Next, we're going to add an area 2D, and we're going to name it a token area. And so these are the settings you're going to want to enable for the token area. Go to space override, make sure it's on combine, make sure point is on, make sure the point center is 0, 0, and for the collisions, you want the collision layer to be 19 and the mask to be 18, 19, and 20. Collision layer 19 is going to be just for the token, whereas the mask, as in what's going to be able to pick it up, would be the character portrait, the token itself, because it's going to collide with other tokens, and the hand, which we're going to add after this. After the token area, we're then going to add a collision shape, and we're going to give it a shape of circle shape 2D. Then it's going to have a size of 50 pixels to cover the size of the image, or I should say the image should cover the size of the circle, which is 50 pixels. After this, we're going to add a label, and for now we're going to have the label text be P1 for player 1. So as for the settings for the label, all you're going to need to do is make sure the horizontal and vertical alignment is centered, make sure it is uppercase, and then under layout you want to have the anchor preset be on center. Then if you want, you can customize any theme overrides you want, such as having custom fonts or giving it an outline or a shadow. That will be up to you. Then next, the last thing you're going to want to add is another collision shape, and then we're going to call it token collision. And then we're going to give it the shape of a circle shape 2D again, and we're going to have it be 50 pixels again. And so that's the structure of the token. The next thing we're going to do is add the script. So one thing we must do before we start adding the script is for us to go to the token node, or the rigid body 2D node, and click up here where it says group selected nodes. This will make it so that when you select the scene, you'll be able to drag the whole thing around rather than select individual parts of it. Once that is done, you can now add the script. So we need to go on the rigid body 2D, click here to attach a script. We can call it token, create, and this is the code you're going to want to type in. Alright, so this is the script that we're going to be using. Be sure to type out each of the lines. If you don't want to type out each of the lines, don't worry. All of the source code available in this video is going to be on the Patreon, so you'll be able to download it from there and just insert it without having to type it out yourself. Before we continue, there's a few things I want to explain about this code so that it can make sense to you whilst you're debugging it. The first thing I want to point out is the token ID, which is going to correspond to the player 1 or player 2 or player 4 or 8, depending on how many players you have in your game. Player ID 1 is going to correspond to player 1, so that player 1 is only going to be able to pick up this token, you know, if it was player 1. The next thing as well would probably be the text color. This is something that you're going to be able to change from here. If you want this to show up in the editor itself, all you need to do is go over here and then do add tool, close the token, refresh it, open it up again, and then changing the color. Wait, I forgot to save it actually. So close it, open up token again, and then changing the color should change it over here, as you can see. So I can make it green and whatnot, but I'm going to put it back to white. So if you want to be able to change the color in the editor, just add a tool, but I'm going to remove that for now. The next thing would be the player position. So this is actually very important. We're going to set the token's default position on the character select screen in the next part, and so we're going to use this line of code within the globals.css list or dictionary to set the coordinates, and then we just have the physics process for how the token's going to move and how it's going to stay still, along with the text that it's going to display. And then we have the auto snap, which is going to make it so that when you're on the character selection screen and you drop the token, it's going to actually snap to the center of the nearest character button. And so that's it for the script of the token. A tiny error I'd like to correct here would be, instead of coin area label, make sure it says token area label. Again, when I was making the project for the first time, I called the tokens coins in the code when actually they were meant to be tokens. So if you see any coin areas, replace it with token area. One small correction I'd like to make before I move on to the next section would be that the gravity scale is actually meant to be 0.01 and the damp is also meant to be 0.01. So then the next thing we can do is go to our character select screen, and then we just delete this. We can go to character select screen, instantiate a child scene, add token, and make sure you give it an ID of 1, and then drag it to the player 1 location, and then do the same thing and then give it an ID of 2 and drag it to the player 2 location and give it an ID of 2. Give it maybe a text color of blue and the player 1 and a text color of red. So, and then we can launch this scene and see how it looks. There we go. So we have player 1, player 2. And so now the next thing we're going to work on adding is the hands to actually grab this and for them to be dragged onto the character buttons. Alright, so the next thing we're going to add is the hands to select these tokens. So the first thing we're going to do is create the folders for them. So all we're going to do is navigate to our character select screen folder. Mine's going to be under UI, CSS, and over here we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it hands. The next thing we're going to do is create the scene. So for the actual scene itself, we're going to go up here, we're going to create a 2D scene, and we're going to save this immediately. Go to UI, CSS, hands, and we're going to call this hands underscore CSS, because we're going to have, actually, you know what, we can just call this hands, because we're going to use this for the stage select screen as well. And so then what we're going to do is rename this node 2D to hand, and then I'm going to fill in the other nodes and I'll introduce what those properties are. Alright, so these are the things you're going to want to add to the scene. We're going to add a animated sprite 2D, and then underneath that a label node, then an area 2D, and then under that a collision shape 2D, and then under that a marker 2D. And we're going to name these accordingly. So hand sprite, player number, hand area, collision shape 2D, and position 2D. This may say marker 2D, and I'll explain the importance of the name later. Alright, so here are the properties for each of the nodes. For the hand, you want to make sure you have the right scale. For the hand sprite, you want to check that you have the right position, just to make sure everything is in the center. Also for the hand sprite, we're going to incorporate 3 different sprites: hand grab, hand open, hand point, and these images over here for the hands are going to be provided for you in the description down below. You also want to make sure that the current animation is hand open. That will be the default position of the hand. Then for player number, you can customize it to be whatever you want, as long as it looks nice and is centered and is underneath the hand sprite. There's nothing to change for hand area. And for the collision shape 2D, make sure it's a circle shape 2D with a radius of 29 for the scale that we've chosen. And then for the position 2D, this is going to be -1 and -29. This is going to be the location of where our token will be when we are in the hand grab animation. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to hand sprite and give it a unique name. Then go to the player number and give that a unique name. And this is all going to be useful for our script. So what we're going to do is add a new script. Like so. And we're going to call it hands.gd. Create. And this is the code that you're going to want to type in. Alright, and this is what the code should look like. If you want access to this code without having to type it all out manually, check the description down below where you have access to my Patreon, and you should be able to get the code directly without having to type it out yourself. And so now the next thing we're going to do is connect a few signals. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our hand area, and then what we're going to do is drag this out and then go to area entered, connect it to our hand.gd script, and we're going to make the receiver method on hand area entered, which is the name of this function over here. And then what we're going to do is do the same thing but for on area exited, which is over here, connect it to hand.gd script, and then put in the receiver method. These functions don't have to have these exact names, but these were the function names I came up with when I was designing this game. And so the hand area node should be connected like so. Alright, and so from here what we're going to do is go to our hand area, and we're going to set the mask and the layer so that it can interact with other area 2Ds in the character selection screen. So we're going to have the masks be set to 17, 18, and 19, and then we're going to set the layer to 20. So it'll be on layer 20, which is for the hand, and it'll be able to detect UI collision, the character portraits, and the tokens. Alright, so from here what we're going to do is we're going to actually add the hand into the character select screen. So we're going to go to the character select screen, we're going to go to the very top, click up here, and then we're going to instantiate a child scene. Type in hands, there you go, and drag it to where you want it to be. So I want to have my hand be underneath the player 1 token. I'm going to give it an ID of 1 to say that this is player 1. Then I'm going to duplicate it, Control D, move over the second hand to the player 2 area, and give it an ID of 2 to indicate player 2. Now here's an important step where there's multiple ways to go about it. What we need to do is make sure that our hand has a particular name so that that hand, let's say the player 1 hand, can only select the player 1 token. And so for example, the way it's going to work is we're going to have hand, and it'll be hand_1. And then for player 2, we need to do hand_2. And the reason this is the case, the reason why we have it like this is because in the token we have it so that if the token is picked, it's going to get the node, hand, and then the ID. So the hand must have a name corresponding to its IDs, and there's two ways to go about it. You can either have that hand manually be changed in the code like it is now, so we've hard coded hand 1 and hand 2, or you can go for a more dynamic way where if you go into the hand script, what you can do is type in a code that looks like this on the either physics process or just regular process. So I'll do it on the physics process, and the code will look something like this. Alright, so this is the finished code on line 24. It's self.name equals hand_%s %ID. And what this will do is it will constantly set the name of the hand to hand_ and then the player version. And so once we've done this, you can choose to have this or not have it. As long as you make sure that the hand's name is corresponding to an ID, you can now start the scene. And as you can see, I can move around the hand and I can pick up the token. And when I hover the token over the character button, there's a display at the bottom. If I put the token on it, you see it highlights. If I let go of the token from it, it doesn't highlight. And I can change the stocks and the round time. Alright, so we're nearly done with our character select screen. We've got two more things to do, and one of them includes having boundaries for the hands. As you can tell, when we move our hands about, there is no boundary. There's no way to actually keep it on screen. And so I came up with a solution that basically works as teleporting the hand from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen once it touches the edges. And so this is how we're going to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the character select screen and we're going to add in a node 2D. And what we're going to do actually is name the node 2D boundaries. Underneath this, what we're then going to do is add an area 2D. And this particular area 2D we're going to call top. This is going to be the top boundary. Then what we're going to do is position it accordingly. So we're going to have it basically be around the center. The center of this would be like a 960. And it would be -78. The reason we want it to be at -78 is because the boundary is going to actually have some leeway so that that hand doesn't immediately teleport when it touches the tip of the top of the screen. So then what we're going to do is adjust the layers, make sure that its layer is on layer 1 but its mask is on mask 20. Why? Because we want the area to detect for the hand alone. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a collision shape 2D. And then give it a rectangle shape 2D, which is over here. And you want to basically make it be the length of the character select screen. So in my case, it's going to be 1920 by 60. So this is how thick my board is going to be. Then what I'm going to do is highlight over top, and I'm going to duplicate it, and then call it bottom. And then change its position accordingly. So in this case, I'm going to make it 1113. Like so. So it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. Then what I'm going to do is duplicate this, change it to right, and then what I'm going to do is change its position accordingly. So I'm going to give it a position of 1951. Then I'm going to give it a Y of 540, and then I'm going to rotate by 90 degrees, like so. So it covers this whole area. Then what I'm going to do is copy this, call it left, and then give it its own position as well. So this would be -33 by 40 and 90 degrees. So if you want this to look a bit more neat, what you can do is go to bottom, make sub resources unique, or I should go to a collision shape actually, make sub resources unique. Do the same thing with the other collision shape, make sub resources unique. And then do the same thing with the left collision shape, make sub resources unique. And then adjust the right and left so that they are actually the right size. So this would be 1084, so, and this one would be 1084 too. Like that, so I can look all nice and nice. So what you want to do from here is you want to go to boundaries and you want to add a script. So what we're going to do is add a script over here. You can call it boundaries.gd, create it, and you can get rid of all of this. And what we're going to do is connect signals from each of these area 2Ds. And then in each of these, what you want to do is you want to type, get rid of the pass, this. So what this is going to do is it's going to get the node that's touched it and change its global position. So for example, with the top area, you might want it to go, you're going to want it to go to the bottom, right? So you want it to teleport to the bottom of the screen, which would be the same x-axis but a different y-axis. So it will look something like this. So this is what it will look like for the top area. For the bottom area, you can copy and paste this and then type in 105. For the right area, what you can do is copy and paste that, but make sure change this to be on the y-axis over here. So change it to y, and then give a value of how far to the left you'd want the hand to teleport to. So in my case, I'm going to give a number of 102. This is something that's more of a trial and error, so don't worry if you don't get this right first try. These are my values that work for 1080p. And then 1810, like so. So as you can see, when I run the game, my hands teleport, each of them, like so. Now, I've noticed actually that when I do the left teleport, it's slightly too far to the right. It doesn't look convincing enough, it's not close enough. So I could change the values. Same with when it touches the bottom, it goes a bit too low from the top. So that's something I could change. But that's pretty much it for the boundaries. Alright, so with the final part of this tutorial, what we're going to do is add a ready to fight banner, so that when all players have selected their character, a banner appears and they can move over to the stage select screen. So to do this, what we're going to do is click up here, we're going to add a node 2D. Then we're going to call it ready to fight banner, like so. And then we're going to give it access as a unique name, like so. From here, what we're going to do is add a color rect. And then we're going to give it a color. You can choose what color you want it to be. It doesn't even have to be a color rect. You can decide to have this instead be a texture rect if you have your own custom artwork. Anyways, moving on, we're going to go to layout, transform, and then we're going to give it a size of 1958 by 64. So this is going to be roughly, or 94. This is going to be roughly the thickness of our ready to fight banner. And then I'm going to give it a center, like so. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a label underneath the color rect. And then I'm going to make it say ready to fight, like so. So it says it up there, and then we're going to center it. There we go, like that. So we're going to give it a full rect, then we're going to center it, and I'm going to just give it a font size of 50. I'm not going to customize it too much in this video, but you can choose to customize the text as much as you like. Then what I'm going to do is add an area 2D, and I'm going to call it ready to fight, like so. And I'm going to give it a collision shape, and make sure that it's a rectangle shaped 2D. Then in that rectangle shaped 2D, I'm gonna give it an X of 1954. Then 94. And an important step here is to disable it. Make sure it is disabled. Then what I can do is transform this, so I can give this a transform of, I think it would be 960. A bit more than that. Like that. And then change the Y so that it is aligned with the texture, like so. So that's it pretty much for the main ready to fight banner. Next, we're going to add an animation player. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is go to the ready to fight banner, add a child node, and we're going to add an animation player. Then what you're going to do is add 2 tracks, one called ready and the other one called not ready. So as you can see, we have the 2 tracks. For both tracks, you want to add only 2 key tracks. So for both of them, you're going to go to ready to fight banner, go to position and add a key. Make sure you do not create a reset track. Then what you're going to do is go to the collision shape 2D and then make a track for disabled. Then do the same thing for not ready. So the way this animation is going to work is we're going to have the banner pop up and then go back down when every character is selected. And then if, let's say, a character is deselected, it's going to go up and then go down underneath the character select screen when it's not in use. Alright, so the way this animation is going to work is for the first key on the ready to fight banner position, we're going to set its position to be 960 by 1224. So 960 by 1224. And when you move the track, you're going to see that's teleported down here. We're going to add another key at 0.3, and instead of it being 1224 on the y-axis, we're going to have it be 624. Once you move the player, you're going to see it's moved up, and then at 1 we're going to add a key and we're going to have it be 440, like so. So then you can see the animation will go up like so. For it to go up and then down, you want to add a modifier, make sure that the track is cubic rather than linear. Then you'll see it go up and then down like so. Importantly as well, you also want to have the collision shape be not disabled. So you want to make sure it's off for disabled at the end. So it's disabled at the beginning, then once it's there, it's ready, and then the hands can press on it. Then you're going to do the exact opposite, but for not ready. And so this is what it should look like once you're done with the not ready. Again, to do this, you have the keys at the same time stamp. So 0, 0.3 and 1. And the position is just done in reverse. So you start out here, with it being at 440. Then when you move over here, it goes to 336. And when you move over here, it goes to 1224. And also another key difference you want to have for not ready is that at the very beginning, the collision shape 2D is disabled all the way throughout the animation, whereas on the ready, it's disabled at first and then enabled at the end of the animation. And so with this done, the last thing we have to do is incorporate the code to actually get this animation to play at the right time. Alright, so to get your animation to play at the right time, what we're going to do is introduce a brand new script to the whole character select screen. So what we're going to do is add a new script here, call it character select screen, create, and this is the code you're going to want to type out. Alright, so this is the code you're going to want to type in. It looks like this. You can pause the video here and type it all out. And if you want direct access to it, don't forget to go to the Patreon. And from here, we actually have a few signals to connect. So the way we're going to do this is we are going to go to our 2D scene and our preview, our character previews. What we're going to do is finally connect our character ready and character unready signals that we created a while back in this video. So as you can see, when the character is selected, a signal is emitted. So what we're going to do is connect character ready. Notice how this is player 1, so we're going to connect character ready to the character select screen, and we're going to connect it to on player 1 car ready. So I'm going to copy that, get rid of this signal that I just created by accident. So disconnect that, delete this. Going to connect it to the character select screen, and we're going to use this receiver method. There we go. So it's now connected to this function. And then I'm going to do the same thing with unready. So on character 1, character unready. Make sure it's the character select screen and unready. Then we're going to do the same thing with player 2. So we're going to go to the second preview. Add a character ready, change the receiver method, and then do the same thing for unready. Now there is a better way to do this. I have found a better way to actually do this. A video might be uploaded to the Patreon for a more efficient way to connect these signals, because you can imagine if there were 4 players, that's almost 8 functions and 8 signals to connect. So I might make a video on how to make this a more efficient process. As for what this step does, when the signal is emitted, is going to have start this dictionary be populated with either player 1 or player 2. If player 1 just got ready, it's going to populate character 1 with the character that player 1 has just selected. And then if player 2 has just readied their character, then character 2 is going to be populated with the character they're playing. So let's say it's Fox and Wolf. What's then going to happen is the ready to fight function is going to be activated, and what this function does is check to see if both player 1 and player 2 have a character assigned to their player. If that is true, then what's going to happen is that selected is going to equal true. If selected equals true, then you're going to play the animation that we've just made. We're going to play the ready animation. But if both characters are not selected, so let's say only player 1 is ready and player 2 just unready themselves, then what's going to happen is that selected is going to be false. This variable selected is going to be false, and the animation not ready is going to play instead. So then now what we're going to do is move on to the hands, because the hands have some important script functionality. Actually, one quick thing before we move on to the hand, what we're going to do is go to the ready to fight area, not the banner but the area 2D, and we need to change its layer. We need to make sure that its layer is on 17, which is the UI collisions. Make sure it's not on 1, and make sure there is no mask because it's not actively detecting for anything. As for the hand, what we're going to do is click on the hand, go to the script, and over here where it says if you press the select button and the name of the area that is selected is ready to fight, which is this over here, this area, then if the current state is point, so if it's pointing at the ready to fight banner, then what's going to happen is the scene is going to change. So because we haven't actually created our stage select screen, I'm going to direct it to the title screen like so. So if the current state is point, as in if the hand is currently pointing towards the ready to fight banner and it detects the ready to fight banner and the hand button is pressed, then you will be able to change scene to the title screen. And so that should be it for the character select screen tutorial. And so before I end off this tutorial, here's the demonstration of the game actually working, or the character select screen actually working. I'm going to launch the scene, and so as you can see, you can increase the stock, increase the time. When you go over to the left side, it goes to the right side. Same with player 2, so it's not just player 1. Player 2 can also influence the stocks. Player 2 can pick up a token. Player 2 cannot pick up player 1's token. I'm not sure if you can hear my keyboard where I'm pressing it. When you move over from one side to the other side with the token moves along with you. If you try to move the token to the button area, the token is let go of. If you select the token within a certain area of the button, it will kind of like it'll kind of, what you call it, gravitate towards the center like so. Do the same thing with player 1. Player 1 is selected, the ready to fight banner comes up, and if I select that, then I go to the title screen and I can exit. So there's a few things I want to add that might tweak the UI. these things I can show you right now actually. So one thing I'd like to adjust is having the hand actually be above the ready to fight banner. So currently when both players select their character, like so, their hands are behind the ready to fight banner. So the way I can fix that is quite simple. Go to hand 1, go to ordering and make sure the Z index is 2. You could also do this in the native scene itself, so you could go to ordering and make sure that it's 2 here, save it, close this, and then both hand 1 and hand 2 is going to have an ordering of 2, so that when you run the scene, and you put both characters down, like that, you can see that both hands are above the ready to fight banner. There you go. Before finishing off this tutorial, there are a few optional things or customizable things I'd like to bring your attention to that you can adjust. So the first thing I want to bring your attention to is the auto snap feature of the tokens. Each token has an auto snap feature in this function where the token will automatically snap to the location of the nearest button, character button. So for example, by default it's 100, but if I set it to something like 400 and I save and then I run the scene, if I put my token all the way out here, it will automatically snap to the nearest character button. Same thing with player 2. If I make it something smaller, like 50, even if it's right next to the edge of the button, it won't automatically snap to the center of it, as you can see over here. But it will if you're close to the center of it. Same with player 2. So right here it's not going to go, but I can have it go even closer. So that will be it for the auto snap feature. And then for adding a new character button, what you're going to do is go to the first character button that we've made, which is Fox. Go to his scene, go to scene, and then go to save scene as. Now what we're going to do is make a new scene. So we're going to do CSS button, and instead of Fox we'll do something like wolf, and then press save. So then now we're going to have 2. We're going to have one for Fox and one for wolf. So this one is for Fox, this other one is for wolf. And so now what we can do is just change all the parameters. So instead of the character being Fox, it'll be wolf, and I can change out the textures. And so it might look something like this by the end of it, where you have the wolf sprites and the wolf name. Don't forget to change the label. And another thing you also want to make sure of that's very important is if you go to node and then you go to groups instead of signal, always make sure that your character is part of char_select group. So then you can save this scene. Then the next thing you'd want to do is go to back to the character select screen, go to the character previews scene, and make sure you have the parameters for your character. So if you go into the script, you would have to make sure that you have a full body sprite available. So in this case, I have @export var wolf, capital wolf, with a texture, and I have its full body texture over here. And then I would basically have to copy Fox's hovered, select, and deselect code and change out the parameters for wolf instead of Fox, wolf instead of Fox, wolf instead of Fox, wolf instead of Fox, and I have the same thing for Mario. And then the last thing you'd want to do is go back to the character select screen, and under the character buttons you add another character. So instantiate a child scene. I'll do btn and then wolf, like so, and then you can see that you have two characters to select from. If you want to change how the characters are separated, then you can change the H and V separation. But before I start the scene, you do need to connect the signals, so do not forget to connect the signals. So what we have here is signals to connect to the character previews. So for example, with character preview 1, I can go to the script and see there's on character hovered, on character selected, and on character deselected. So what I'm going to do is copy this, go to the wolf character, go to character hovered, find the character preview 1 and then put in the function, and then you can see that it's connected. Then I'll do on character selected, go to preview 1, on character selected. Then I do the same thing with deselected, like so. And then you do the same thing with the other one. So you want to go back to hovered, do another one for the other preview, like so, connect it, then do the same thing for selected for the second preview, and then do one for deselected, like so. Then you can go back to the character select screen. And so now I can actually start the scene, and then you'll be able to see that I can actually choose both characters, Wolf and Fox. And I can do vice versa as well. So I can have Wolf for player 2 and then Fox for player 1, like so, and then do ready to fight. And so that should be it for adding another character button. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That wraps it up. If you want access to the scripts and the files in this video, don't forget to check out the Patreon. And in the next video, we'll be going over the stage selection screen, so you guys can choose which stage you want your characters to be fighting on. Anyways, with that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.